This is Force Crag Mine in the Coaldale Valley near the town of Keswick in the Northern Lake District, and I'm here today to have a go at shooting an industrial landscape. The Lake District has a long history of mining, and Force Crag Mine was the last working metal mine inside the Lake District National Park. And today I want to put together a series of images that combine to tell the story of this place. The mine is made up of two main buildings. You've got the main mining building itself, and then you've got an administration building here in front. And I'm going to start with a shot of just the main building. For my first shot, I don't want to do anything too complicated, so I'm just filling the frame with the main body of the mine. Now I've got the camera set up slightly lower than usual, and I'm shooting at 16mm, and I'm hoping by not being too low I'm not going to distort the mine too much. I am going to move that bollard though. There isn't too much depth of field to worry about with this first shot, so I'm going to shoot at f8. I'm also bracketing one stop either side so that I've got the option to blend these exposures together in Lightroom if I need to. Now at this point I would just like to talk a little bit about the post-processing that I intend to do on these images. Normally when I'm in the Lake District, what I'm trying to do is capture its beauty, and my post-processing workflow reflects that. But there isn't really any beauty here. It's really quite an ugly structure. So what I want to do is use a kind of modern, kind of urban, low saturation, high contrast effect to really bring out some of the detail and give this a real kind of grungy look. Now, a word of warning about these kind of post-processing techniques. They're very fashionable, and that means that they do tend to date. So we need to be very, very careful with those. And remember that good photography is timeless. For my second image, I want to go for a wider shot that includes both the mine and the smaller building that sits in front of it. And I'm also going to include a third element. Right here in the foreground we have this concrete structure. I've got no idea what it is, but it works as a brilliant lead-in line that draws the attention up towards the mine in the distance. Right, okay, shot settings for this one. I have got a lot more depth of field in this shot, so I've stopped down to f11 just to be on the safe side. I'm focusing on the concrete structure just in front of me. And yeah, I kind of quite like this shot. The mine gets its name from Force Crag, which is this rather impressive rock structure right here with this waterfall tumbling down through the middle of it. And so I want to get a shot of the main mine building and Force Crag in the background. I'm not able to include all of the mine, so I'm just going to have part of it on the left hand side of the frame with Force Crag up in the right hand corner. It does mean I'm going to have to move that pesky traffic cone again. Now the trickiest bit about this shot is the building on the right hand side. Because it's a building, it's got lots of straight lines, and what I'm trying to do is include Force Crag in the frame, so that involves tilting the camera upwards. And the problem is when I do that, I get what's called converging verticals, which mean that these straight lines seem to lean into the frame. So what I'm doing is I've set my tripod up as high as it will go, and that's allowing me to keep the lines on the right hand side of the frame, the vertical lines of the building, relatively straight. I now may need to make a few little adjustments in Lightroom to just straighten those up, but it's pretty good having the tripod up nice and high. Now for this shot I'm going down to f16 because my background is even further away, and I want to try and keep everything as sharp as I possibly can. Part of me was tempted to try a shot at f4 and have the building really sharp and the mountain in the background out of focus, but I'm not really sure how effective that's going to be. As you look around the mine, you can see the remains of other structures that would have been part of the mine when it was up and running. And for my next shot, I want to include some of that. So I'm going to look for something that I can use as a really strong foreground and have the mine and the other building in the distance. There are a couple of compositions that I'm interested in here. This is the first one, and I'm using the pile of bricks that is closest to the mine. So I've got that in the bottom left hand corner. That's a really nice strong piece of foreground. And then in the distance I've got both the mine and the second building. What I don't like about this composition is I've got this bricks here that's leading in from the right hand side. It's coming out the side of the frame. Now it is leading in, drawing attention away from the edge of the frame, so I might just get away with it. The second composition is a bit further back. Really strong piece of foreground, this wonderful angled piece of brick, and that leads just up to the mine in the distance. So I'm going to take this one and then I go back and get the other one. Now I do want to get at least one shot that shows how the mine sits in the wider landscape. So I've come up on the hillside alongside the mine and I'm trying to get a shot of the mine complex with the mountains in the background. Now some of you will think that this might be a brilliant shot to include in my Hand of Man project. But the problem is that that project is designed to show the positive impact that man has had on the Lake District landscape. And although this is a fantastic photographic subject, you would have to say that it hasn't really added to the overall aesthetics of the surrounding area. So compositionally speaking, this is a fairly straightforward shot again. I'm trying to include as much of the mine complex as I possibly can. So I have the mine on the right hand side and I have that little house on the left hand side. And in the foreground I've got the remains of some concrete shed or something like that. My settings are fairly straightforward again as well, nothing much has changed. I'm shooting at f11 and I'm still bracketing. And I'm shooting at 16mm. And I've shot everything so far using the 16 to 35mm lens, and that's a lens that I don't use very often. Now that wasn't a conscious decision, it just seems to suit this scene and this subject nicely. For my final shot, I want to get something that really shows that this mine is no longer in action, and I haven't been able to find anything better than this rusty old conveyor belt. Now obviously the belt that would sit on top of this is long gone, and this is the conveyor belt that would have fed the rocks from this big hopper here into the main mine itself. And so this is going to be my final shot, and I'm going to shoot along the conveyor belt, and then I've got the mine and the hills in the distance in the background. Now for this shot, I'm not just going to shoot straight down the conveyor belt in the conventional way. What I've done is I've actually pointed it off slightly to the left hand side, and that's because I've got some other metal workings on the right hand side that I want to include. Now it still draws the eye towards the mine in the distance, but it's a little bit more interesting than just shooting straight down the line. So that's the last of the images that I'm going to take as part of my series here at Force Crag Mine. But what am I going to do with them? Well, what I thought I'd do is put them together as a photo essay that attempted to tell a bit of the story about this place. And I'll put that on my website. And if you're interested, I'll leave a link in the description below. Anyway, that's it for me for today. Thanks ever so much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you next time.